Let's call it the Catalyst Sessions for
Yes.
Tuesday. I'm Bill DeYoung, and thanks for joining us here. I got a new camera here, so I'm looking up a little bit. Have you been to 1901 Central Avenue? If you haven't, the Imagine Museum recently celebrated, well, it was January, its second anniversary. At around 35,000 square feet, this museum houses more than 700 pieces of studio glass sculpture. Unbelievably beautiful stuff in a beautiful setting, and you need to go by and check it out. Now, the museum, it's more than twice the size of the Chihuly, by the way. The building and the art is owned by Clearwater philanthropist Trish Duggan. And Jane Buckman is with me now. And let me make sure that people can see you because, oh, well, there's me and there's Jane. Hi, Jane.
Hello.
Jane is the executive director of the museum. Now, Trish has called this a gift to St. Petersburg several times, and it reflects not just her own passion for the art and for the artist, but for her belief, her strongly held belief that this relatively new medium of glassmaking is something that's both beautiful and significant and lasting, and deserves to have a showplace like this, as so many people in the world have also figured out. I know you don't want to put words in Trish's mouth, but can you expound on that, about your manifesto, as it were?
So Trish, when she opened this, she had 3 criteria, and we have that as part of our mission to inspire, to uplift, and educate. So the inspiration is her respect for the various artists and what they do with this material of glass.
Yeah.
And obviously her choice as she puts this collection together is all about beauty. I think that everyone who walks to the museum will agree that beauty is interpreted many different ways, but you will see it in all of its interpretations as you go through the museum. And then also to educate, to really inform people about these artists, about this movement. And, when we started, it was basically an American collection. And over our 3 years of operation, that Trish has determined that she wanted to have the most significant collection of both American and international glass art in the world. And
the most significant. I mean, how does one define that? Not biggest, but most varied, most variety of beautiful styles and techniques. What does that mean?
So she has people. She has the Habitat Gallery out of Michigan, and Corey Hampson, who is familiar with all of the glass artists around the world. His father started the gallery. He's taken it over. He's expanded the business. So he actually takes Trish all around to the various countries, and she meets the artists. The caliber of artists that are making pieces that deserve to be in a museum. So right now, and that's another job we've been doing over the last 5 weeks, is the pulling together the whole accumulation of work that she has acquired thus far. So our collection is right now over 1,500, representing maybe 4 or 5 other countries, and or continents, and she still has more to go. So this is. Wait,
did you say 1,500? That's more than twice. That's the entire collection, not everything that's on display right now?
Yes, and now, because the pieces that we bring into the museum now are so much museum quality, and in their size and dimension, and just in their how spectacular that they are, that we only right now have on display about 350.
Wow.
We started with 500, and then we were growing it, and then as more and more new work was coming in, and you probably recognized yourself, more significant, larger pieces, that we can't have 60 pieces in a gallery, and now it's down to about 40.
Well, what I think is really interesting too, and as we were talking about before we went live, Amy and I visited there in January and took a tour. And it looks, I don't want to say it looked totally different from the last time I've been there, but there are a lot of different things. I want to bring something up here.
Sure.
Let's show people what we're talking about.
Okay.
Let me try this. This is one of the most astonishing things I've ever seen. Can you see that? Is that showing up on your screen? Tell me what, tell them what this is. And look at the way the rooms are beautiful. They're beautiful exhibition galleries. This thing, it's like the bowels of the Starship Enterprise. Tell us what this is, Jen.
So that's a piece by Anthony James, and he's out of California. And basically, it's mirrors and LED lights and just metal. And so he put together the form and with the mirrors to create the effect that you see right there.
Yeah.
It was one of the showstopper pieces at the SOFA show in Chicago 2 years ago. And once we saw it, it was like, that piece has to go into the museum. And Trish and I, we conferred, and it was a done deal at that time, and we brought it into the museum, and it does definitely, it is a showstopper for the museum.
It is one of those things that you literally can't look away from. And,
you can't. And then, you know, if you go into the portals of it, you know, there's a lot of mystery. People say they can see their eye or they can't. So it's always fun to see how people interact with it.
I wanted to bring up, if I can make this work too, and so far so good, I want to bring up another one here.
Yeah.
This is kind of indicative of a lot of things you see in the Imagine Museum. And let's try this bad boy. Tell us what this is. I love this sort of thing, this kind of mute, opaque glass sculpture.
Yes, that's a piece by Leah Wingfield, and she lives in Southern Oregon. Her and her husband are glass artists, and that's cast glass. And Leah has a number of pieces. She has 4 or 5 pieces in the museum. It's just, you know, her work is always personal. It's self-reflective. This piece, you know, the female bust is sitting on top of books, art, you know, history books about art. So it's a very thought-provoking piece.
There's so much. You have pieces by Chihuly in there as well, don't you? I mean, you've got basically representations from all over the world and all over the historical span of artists, of glass artists.
We really do. I mean, we do have the work from the early 60s when Dale, among others, were actually, you know, defining this new glass movement. So because we have Chihuly down the street, we don't really have any. We have one beautiful piece, one of his baskets, and then the other pieces that we have are actually very early pieces of Dale's.
Yes.
And just to really show, everybody starts somewhere, and Dale had an idea, you know, from the very beginning of what he was going to do with that glass material. So you can start seeing it in the early vessels he was creating.
There's a bit of evolution on display there. Talk
Sure.
to us, if you will, about what I found fascinating when I researched this, and we've talked quite a few times, is that this movement of studio art glass really is only, what, about 50, 60, maybe 60 years old?
Well, it was the artist in the early 60s.
Yeah.
And the colleges, it was right after, you know, it was right during and in the time of Vietnam. It's when the art departments were really exploding in colleges all across the country. There was a lot of eager and young people to create art and wanted to make art. So there was a gentleman in Madison, Wisconsin, believe it or not, at the University of Wisconsin, who invented the furnace so that artists could start manipulating the glass outside of the factory setting. And so it started there, and the history is fascinating because, you know, this person went to this program, studied under that person, then they moved over here, and the movement started in California, and then it's, you know, then it's just started going all over. Dale brought, Chihuly brought Lino Tagliapietra from Italy, from Murano, in the early 80s, and he then brought the Italian glass blowing to the American artists at that time. So it was in the 80s. There was just a lot of fusion that was happening internationally, but definitely influencing the American artists. And the Europeans were thinking that the American artists were so irreverent as how they were treating glass because of the long traditions of glass in their own countries. So now it's interesting in the 21st century just to see how this material has exploded as an art form really all around the world.
Well, that what a segue for me. I wanted to bring this one up because it's the more abstract pieces that really
Yeah.
catch my attention. And you know, one of the things that's so beautiful about glass like this when it's on display is just depending on where the light's coming from, it takes on different character and different forms. Tell us this. I'm not sure what this is. Just a picture I liked. Jane, tell us what this is.
This is a piece by Alex Bernstein. It's cast glass. So in that process, you have you mold. You have a positive of the image that you would like to cast, and then you make molds. Then you separate the molds. You pour the hot glass into the molds, and then it has to cure. It has to the temperature has to go down slowly so that the atoms and the molecules inside of the glass won't make it to expand and break. And then once that, say for Alex, when he gets it out of the mold, then there is tremendous amount of hand carving and polishing to bring that surface up so that you have that very polished surface with a more rougher surface. But believe me, these are hours, weeks, months to get these pieces to the perfection that you see.
Cast glass as opposed to blown glass. You know, there's so many different ways of doing it.
There are so many. And that's the fun thing about the museum is because we show every kind of approach. From the blown glass, it's, you know, they have the pipe and they have the gather glass at the end. It's something like you might see at the Morian or at Duncan's. And so then, you know, the bubble is blown out and then the forms are put together. Then you have cast glass like you have with Alex pieces there. And then you have laminated glass and slump glass and plate and enamel. There's just so many different types, fused glass. There's just so many ways to work with glass. But I will have to say that no matter what technique that you're using, these artists that are working with this material are as much physicists and scientists as they are artists, because what they have to know about the glass material and the heat, and if you have iron or ore, and I mean, it's amazing the technical expertise they must have in order to get the result like you see here in the museum.
Unbelievable stuff. I was thinking the process of cast glass, and who is it that does that sand casting glass? It's somebody. That Marlene, there's somebody around her, and I know that
Marlena Rose does it.
Marlena Rose and Trish does that as well. And
she
me,
does it. Yeah.
You need patience of a saint and a lot of talent and a good amount of luck, because things will just break and you can't really go back and fix it.
Every glass artist will tell you that there is more glass that ends up on the floor than on a pedestal.
Let's take a look at another one here.
Sure.
And again, I'm going to just ask you to tell us what this is. This is something that I think that my wife took a photo of when we were there in January. And so artists work with all kinds of media. They also work with insects and flowers. What?
Well, what's interesting, this is Paul Tankard. Paul Tankard is the most accomplished, and I hate to call them glass paperweights, but I guess they're, you know, I could say a glass ore, but they were invented as paperweights.
A bunch of his stuff there, these things. There's a whole series of them, isn't there?
we have they're in those little honeycombs. So we have 60 of them on display.
Honeycombs.
And so what's interesting, that's flame work. So those bees and the insects and the flowers, those are all made of glass also, but they're made from glass rods and a flame, and then it's formed into those shapes. Then, believe it or not, that they know the temperature of what has to be what and when, and then there would be this globe mold, and that you have to put all of those precious things you just made in glass, and you have to put them in one side of the mold, fill it with glass, and then also on the other side, and pull it together so it makes the full paperweight, the full circle, the orb that you're seeing. Very complicated. And so people are like, those are real bees and flowers, right? I mean, they're just kind of encased in this glass. It's like, no, believe it or not, it's all glass.
Absolutely amazing. What have I got here? Oh, yeah. Okay. See, Jane, I told you I'm basically, I'm paid to be a writer, but I have to click all this stuff here to make it work.
I get it.
I have two more I wanted to look at very quickly.
Sure.
And this is certainly one. Here, vamp for me a little bit. I'll be right back. Okay. Let's try that again, folks. Where's my button? Boom. Okay. I think I know what this is, but tell us. I love this. Talking about using different pieces of things. Can you see that?
Oh, so
Yeah.
that's a piece from Trish's new series.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I thought so.
Yeah, and it's a cyborg series. We call that whole series is called Becoming, and it's transformation.
Along a wall, along corridor. I remember this.
Right,
yeah.
right. And it's all about the transformation between the science and nature and art. So science and cyborgs and what's really happening, doing the research for it. People, it is now said that if you hold a cell phone in your hand, you're a cyborg, because you have this device that has more information in your hand than perhaps what you might be able to process in your brain.
But the glass, this is like it's carved glass, or how is this done?
So it's etched glass.
Etched glass, right, okay.
Glass, and so we have 66 of them in our second floor hallway that then ends up in a augmented reality butterfly kaleidoscope where you can take selfies then. So it's quite dramatic. Given that the abundance that we have with the art, that you can't go any place in the museum without having every corner filled with something.
It's a beautiful thing. I have, let's see, one more picture, and I've got a whole bunch of questions here that I'm enjoying looking at these photographs so much that I have to remember that we have a certain amount of time to go. One more though. Let me do this.
Sure.
Bada boom. Bada bing.
The new one. We've got even more.
Well, send me some pictures. I've been locked in this house for 2 months. Okay, one more, and this is another showstopper, crowd pleaser. This thing, what we're looking at is it's something like 9 or 10 feet long. Is it not?
Yes, it's the Brent Key Young piece. So that's also it's made of it's flame work also. When you think of Brent, he has a clear rod and a flame, and he's twisting all of those forms to give you what you see in front of you. They don't get done in a week, I'll tell you that. And some of his assistants came in the museum, and so they were giving us the real lowdown on this whole process. So they're so exacting. And that Brent used to be an engineer, and so I think you can kind of tell that when you see his work. And and everything is so even, and the lines and the angles.
Very precise. I remember you could look straight through it to the other side. Perfectly.
And so if something was imperfect, he would be cutting out those elements of glass and redoing it in order to create that perfection that we see in the museum today.
Folks, if you haven't seen this, it's like glass spaghetti. We're not looking at a subject there at all. It's absolutely unbelievable. Jane, I wanted to ask you, with all the innovations we're looking at here, do you still find that there is a certain stigma attached? Oh, glass. Oh, that's like going to, the shelves in grandma's house with all the glass penguins. How is that art? Do you still find people come until they see it? think,
You know what I say?
it is.
I say that's so 20th century. You know, in the 21st century, that there is no question when you see the work that you see in this museum and other museums now around the country, there's no question of how these artists have elevated this material as a fine art material.
You really do. Yeah. So yeah. And I want to talk to you about the concept of the glass coast, which everybody loves to talk about.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Because we're getting a reputation here, and without dropping names, you know, Duncan is here, the Chihuly collection is here. You guys are here. Amazing stuff. There's glass art everywhere, and there's so many artists here. And the Glass Art Society was here last year with its international conference. Are we the Glass Coast? Are we going to be the Glass Coast? Is Visit St. Pete Clearwater embracing this as part of our artistic, you know, business cards?
I would say it's aspirational at this time. But we're here. Duncan's here. You've got the Morian.
Yeah.
What we would like to see is more of the artists, more of the glass artists be setting up shop in this area. I think the more glass artists that we have, the more active the scene will become. And I think everyone, especially with our museum and the quality of work in this museum, I think it does push everybody who is currently here working with glass to push a little harder. Because otherwise, like many of the glass artists would not have been exposed to any work like this unless the museum was here. Because this artwork is not, it's not everywhere, right? I mean, you really have to travel to see this kind of work.
That's what I was talking about. It's becoming part of the destination, you know.
Yes.
And I think that's. I just found another picture I want to open, and we're gonna.
Okay, great.
We'll do it really, really quickly. And, okay, that works. Click, 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 Bill. I just wanted to share this because I took this picture of Trish Duggan, and I loved her artwork. Is beautiful. She has an amazing eye. And for they're so delicate and they're so beautiful, and and I find it to be very inspiring as a patron of the arts and someone who, you know, well, puts their money where their mouth is, obviously, but is so completely involved without just being a philanthropist. Here's some money, go put up my museum. You know, I think that's beautiful. And tell hello from me if nothing else. Hi, Trish.
She was just here today.
Oh,
so
yeah.
She is very involved with the museum and still with acquiring the collection and what we're doing here, what we're communicating, and how we are presenting the museum. She is very inspirational and a terrific person to actually want to give this gift to St. Pete.
Well, that's how we started. So we're almost done. So that's a good way to wrap up. You are open now. You opened again on the 9th. Tell us how that's working. And
so we've modified our hours. We've limited the hours. We're open Wednesday through Sunday from noon to 4 p.m. And people are required to wear masks. If you don't have them, that's part of your ticket price, is we give you a mask. And we have, you know, we've met all of the protocol for hand sanitizer, surface, more housekeeping. The collection actually gets cleaned more frequently also. That's a lot of glass to clean. But we've stepped up everything to try to make the safest environment so people can come here and really feel the uplift, because that is what we want to give. We want to share that with people right now. So we also will be giving special tours for people that want to do an outing with friends or family of up to 6 people, and they'll have the museum to themselves from 11 to noon on Tuesday through Saturday. So we'll be booking those tours real soon also. We just need to give people this environment to, you know, to really help and elevate this time for them. The people who did come through last weekend, that's all they could do was just thank us. You know, because I was here and I wanted to hear what the feedback was and what brought people out. And They came because they wanted to see the collection, and they came because they knew they would be uplifted.
Well,
So that was good enough for us to why we opened.
I was going to say that's a lot of Windex, you know,
Oh, that's another 10 minutes of how you clean this stuff, and not Windex.
Oh, okay. Well, the professional grade class.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Right.
Well, I think in closing, I really would like to say that the Imagine Museum is a beautiful trip. Man, I mean, it's a beautiful journey through.
Yes,
You
it
learn
is a
so
journey.
much. We didn't even talk about the virtual reality experiences that you have there and the augmented reality,
Yes.
which
Yes.
if you go to the website, which is kind of in the process of catching up with how quickly they change things, it'll tell you all about it.
Yes.
But the website is imaginemuseum.com.
Yeah, .com. Yeah,
Okay.
imaginemuseum.com. And we welcome anyone to come out and to be inspired and uplifted.
And, you know, there it is. It was called the Imagine, it was a charter school or something before?
Yeah, it was the Imagine School, I think.
When Trish bought it, she just said, why change the name? It's a beautiful name for this place, which is all about
I
imagination.
think that it was kind of kismet, you know?
Yeah.
I think that she had a idea and she was seeing it through, and the building became available, and so and the name stuck.
And it's at 1901 Central.
Mm-hmm.
And they're open what, Wednesdays through Sundays? Did you say
Wednesdays through Sundays, noon to 4. And if you want a special tour, just call and schedule that from 11 to noon.
Tell them the St. Pete Catalyst sent you.
Right.
Not that it'll do any good, but tell them anyway. So listen, Jane Buckman, absolute pleasure to speak with you as always.
Always.
And
Good to see you too, Bill.
we wish you continued success with the Imagine Museum, and
thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. I'm enjoying this. You know, and we've all met before, and so far I haven't run out of friends. I think we got a few more weeks until I'll have to start interviewing people on the street. But everybody has such a fascinating story, and I'm so glad to bring the Imagine Museum story to folks.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Bill.
So thank you, and we will see you on the other side of all of this.
See you on the other side.
That's right. All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.